Well, welcome to the podcast, and we're keeping true to what we said we'd do this year. We're going all around the world to get the best speakers, to get the most interesting people. Raj Subrameyer is from Chicago in America. He's an international speaker. He's a tech expert, which, probably a little bit of a nerd, but we're going to find out what he does. He's an author, and he's also a knowledgeable person when it comes to management and leadership. And we're going to get into that. Welcome to the show, Raj. How are you, mate?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Mate, fantastic. So, Chicago, what a great city.
Yeah, I know before we started recording, I was talking about the food and the beer scene. And yeah, Chicago is just amazing and really affordable for being a big city and just nice people, and that's what I love about the place.
So were you born in Chicago or were you born somewhere else?
So I was born in the southern part of India,
Yeah.
actually from a place called Chennai. And
Yes.
for your viewers and listeners, so in India, you have 5 big cities, okay? You have Chennai, New Delhi, Kolkata, Bangalore,
Yep.
Mumbai. And I come from Chennai, which is in the southern part of India. It's known for its tech space there. And yeah, that's where I'm from. And then I came to the United States in 2008 and settled down here right now. Gone through various roles in various companies and now running my own business.
So before we talk about all of that, what made you decide to come to the States? I mean, how old were you and how did that all come about?
Yeah, that actually opens up a good segue into some context in terms of why I do what I do, why I came to the United States and stuff like that. So as I said, I grew up in Chennai, and I'm the younger of two kids. My brother has 3 masters and a PhD. He's super smart. Then my dad, since he was born, he was a genius. He studied his entire life in scholarships.
Yep.
Then there I was, the average kid who didn't do well in anything. You name it, sports, dating, academics. I was average in everything. And because of this, I constantly kept comparing myself with other overachievers around me because I wanted to live up to their expectations.
Yeah.
But every time I try to do that, I ended up getting disappointed because I realized I could never live up to people's expectations because they were unrealistic.
Yeah.
So this constant struggle continued throughout my childhood, which led me into becoming an outcast. I developed anxiety, stress, depression. Funny thing, even like I still remember the story. I had this crush on a girl in my 8th grade, and then it took me 2 months just to say hi. So I was that type of nervous wreck, right?
Yeah.
This kind of continued throughout my childhood until I was 19. And then I had a trigger event where I still remember this moment vividly. I was sitting in my study room, and then all of a sudden my chest started hurting.
Wow.
And then I started sweating. I thought I was getting a heart attack, but now I know it was my first panic attack.
Yeah.
And all these feelings which had bottled up inside me over a period of 19 years just exploded. And then for 2 hours, I sat there just crying. And I don't know why I was crying. But then I slowly started realizing different things which were happening, in the sense I was living a life based on other people's opinions. And I didn't want to disappoint them. But in that process, I was disappointing myself. And I was tired of living a life where people never thought anything good about me. And, I always used to get separated out from groups, and no one actually talked to me. So I said, you know what? Screw society, screw people. I know I have the skill set. I know I have my own strengths. I just have to figure it out. I'm going to carve my own identity, and I'm going to strive for greatness. So that's when the entire transformation actually happened, right? And then one thing about Asian folks is, as you may know, when you're born, you're pretty much given 3 choices: doctor, lawyer, or engineer. So
That's
I chose
true,
the engineering path. So I've been a tech guy throughout my life. But so I entered the IT. I started off as software developer, went through so many different roles. But then at one point I decided, you know what? I really want some exposure. I wanted to get away from my usual old environment and wanted something new. That's
Yeah.
when I decided, okay, I'm going to come to the United States and let me do my master's in software engineering, because instead of just coding, I want to know the overall software development process. That's what interests me. And that's why I came to the United States. And yeah, here I've done so many different things which you can delve into, but that was the reason why I came to the United States, because one thing was I wanted to forget my past. I wanted to get away from my past and then carve my own new identity. Second thing was I wanted to explore what is in it for me, like what do I need to do in life? And maybe those realizations would come only if you get out of your comfort zone. And those were the two reasons why I came to the United States.
Wow. And of course, you went to a place that was big in cricket as well. So, you know, you had the best of both worlds.
Cricket is, that's why I tell people, cricket is not it's not a sport in India, it's a religion.
It is a religion.
So,
it's very similar in Australia, yes. And for those who are listening from the States, it's like Canada and America playing in ice hockey when India and Australia playing cricket. It's a very competitive game, and something both countries absolutely love to beat each other at.
Oh yeah.
Mate, when you look at all of that, you've come over to America, you've taken the biggest step, because that is huge. America is not an easy place to make a go of it. It's relentless, it's tough, but it's good. It rewards effort. If you look back now, what would have been your key learning you came from that? You sit back and go, wow, I wish I'd known that. I wish I'd learned that before I came to the States.
One major thing which a lot of immigrants like me who come to a foreign land face is that culture shock. Yeah. Because so many things are different. And I wish I prepared myself for it, because I had to learn everything the hard way. For example, here's a story. I have so many stories, but here's a funny story.
Yeah.
So the first time I come to the United States, I land at the JFK airport in New York, the John F. Kennedy airport. I get out of the gate, and then a person passes me and says, hey, how's it going? Then I said, yeah, I'm doing good. This is my first day here. Come to do my master's, but I keep talking. They just go past me. They don't reply, right? That was kind of weird. But then I keep walking. Then another person passes me, says, how's it going? Then I said, yeah, it's going good. Today's my first day. I start talking, and they pass me as well. They didn't wait and respond to me. Then I was wondering what the hell is happening. So I get out of the airport, and then there was this, I would say, pretty girl, like about 35-ish, I would say 30, 35-ish. She asked me, hey, how's it going? And then I said, you know what? I'm going to let her know how's it going. So I started walking with her side by side and told her how it was going. Today's my first day. And in that time, I had an even thicker Indian accent, right? So, so I was talking to this person, and then I said, yeah, I came here to do my master's. I'm really excited. Everything is new to me. Then she stopped and said, what are you doing? Then I told her that you asked me how it's going, so I'm replying to you. Then she said, weirdo, you weirdo. And then she just left.
Wow.
That's when I realized no one actually gives a shit about you when they say, how's it going in the United States? Of course, except for the friends, because it's a culture thing, know, they just say, how's it going? But outside the United States, at least in the Asian places, even UK and those some European places, if you ask someone how's it going, they'll actually stand there and respond to you, right? And that's just a simple, like, small story where it was a learning curve for me. So what I would definitely advise is, if anyone is coming to a foreign land, you really want to know some of the culture shock you may face.
Yes.
And if so, how do you navigate those situations? I have so many stories. I could actually write a book about my experiences facing culture shock. But that's what I would tell my past self. Definitely research things related to culture.
I know the first time my wife and I went to Thailand 10 years ago, and it's come along leaps and bounds, but back then it wasn't. And we didn't do what you just said. And it's very different culture in Thailand. Beautiful people, love the place. I go normally, Rachel and I normally go once a year when you're allowed to. And wow, we made a couple of embarrassing faux pas over there, but the Thai people are actually quite the opposite. When you make a faux pas, they're very forgiving. And they're not rude.
That's a good thing, because usually in the United States, some people are forgiving, but some aren't.
Yes,
So
true. Very true. Mate, so before we get into what we're actually really going to talk about with leadership, what we've seen post-COVID, with tech, it seems to have the last 2 years, a lot of technology, it seems to have had a massive leap forward. It was always there, but hadn't been taken up. Now people are taking it up. Where do you see for the next couple of years technology with business? Is it going to be AI? Is it going to be robotics? Or are we going to go back to more face-to-face and less technology in the workplace?
that's a great question. And me being in the tech space for over 16 plus years now, I think I could speak for it. So as you're saying, technology has advanced at such a rapid pace in the past decade. Literally every day, every second, there's something new coming up, right? And I think the heavy hitters when it comes to technology would be AI, blockchain, cryptocurrency. And those are like three key things which, have it was new before, but now everything, even if it's not AI, they market it as an AI because it become a buzzword. And I
Yes.
see the trend continuing where people are trying to use technology to solve complex problems so that humans can focus on other things. But it comes at a cost, as we see, for example, in Facebook and a lot of other platforms we use. Data and security and privacy now has become a big issue. So I think that's going to be the case. The more we get into technological trends using these technologies, we are going to see the good side of it, where like in healthcare and a lot of places, it's really, really beneficial. But at the same time, who owns the data, the security of your data? Are they using it without your approval? That's the main question. That's the big question people have. And there are a lot of companies which are trying to figure out ethical way of using technology. But I think we have already been sucked into the technological space, whether we like it or not. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things change from a data and privacy standpoint, but technology is going to help to solve a lot more complex problems, which we thought was once not solvable, but it's going to solve those issues. So that's where I see the trend going, and replacing a lot of humans to do things. For example, you have anonymous cars, like driverless cars. So next time you call an Uber, don't get scared if there's no one inside. Everything will be automated, and then you just go inside, right? So which means that it's forcing people to retool their skill set, which is not a bad thing, but not a lot of people are going to be open to it. So that's where it boils down to: are you ready to retool your skill set to adapt to the new trends in technology? So that's where it comes down to eventually.
It's funny, but I remember when the air conditioning in our house went, and we had to get a quote, and the guy came out and he said, okay, now the new air conditioning units are like this, we replace this, which was all fine. He said, and my wife said, so where do you put the two controls? Of course, we're at a 2-story home. Do you just put them back on the wall? He said, controls. And she said, what do you mean? He said, you'll have a little thing the size of an iPad upstairs. The one then says you won't use, and it'll all be done on your phone. I'm not using it on my phone. I got on my wife, guess what? It's all done now by either talking to Google Nest or on our phone to turn it all on and off. Walk in our room, you ask it to turn the radio on, turn the television on. Now, 5 years ago, you would never have thought we'd be doing it. But now it's just now everything is. I can be at the shops and open my phone and turn the air conditioning on. So when I come home, the house is cold or the house is warm. And that's only a basic change. As you said, things are changing. I remember you wouldn't, but I remember when they first brought ATMs in, the automatic teller machines, and they said that it'll do away with bank branches. It'll do away with tellers. Yeah, it reduced it, but we still have bank branches. We still have tellers. Yes, we don't go into a bank branch now much at all because it's all done online, but they're still there. It's just reskilled. it's amazing. But when you said before the good and the bad, when it comes to leadership and management, which you and I know, and you being a TEDx speaker, have seen both sides. It's very, very different. But I'm seeing, which is very disappointing around the world, a lot of toxic leadership and management coming in to businesses. And I don't know, I can't put my finger on it. Why do you see that type of thing happening, especially in big business? It seems to be eating itself from the inside out.
Yeah, that's a great topic, which I think a lot of people are dealing with right now, especially in the post-COVID era. And this was pretty much the topic I was talking about in my second TEDx talk, which I gave. It was called Confessions of a Toxic Leader. For the first time ever, I revealed to the entire world that I was a toxic leader and I had to come out of it. And I walked them through their journey, what a toxic leader experiences, how to support them, how to build inclusive work environments in organizations. So I covered those things. But coming back to your question, I think with COVID, the human interaction has been reduced. And you're trying to handle multiple things at once, work, life, and then you're working from home, and then you're trying to manage everything with a total shift in mindset and way you communicate. Everything is virtual, and all these things, what happens is it causes stress. In fact, according to the American Psychology Association, nearly 8 in 10 adults say that that COVID has caused significant source of stress in their lives. And most of these people are in leadership roles.
Wow.
But how are they coping up with demands of life coupled with survival, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing here. Stress is a huge factor which makes you do things which you may not have done before. That is number one. Number two is your insecurities. So what were your childhood experiences like? What are your insecurities? So for example, growing up in southern part of India, I work with leaders who followed a strict hierarchical structure. You don't challenge the status quo, and you just do things as they did and as they told you to do. True. And despite that, if you ask questions, you get reprimanded for it. And this constant struggle to follow things as they are, it caught up to me. And then when I started getting into leadership roles, I because of my past history, also became a toxic leader even without knowing it. So insecurities, stress are the two big things, I would say, which has resulted in toxic leadership. And this one thing people have to remember: people are not born toxic leaders. No one is 100% toxic human. No, we all have insecurities. They just get amplified during stressful situations. Everyone has a bad side. But when the stress becomes unbearable, when your insecurities increase, then your toxic traits gets amplified and then starts reflecting on you and people around you. And that was also the whole point of the talk, that I'm not a bad human. I've done a lot of good things in life. But it just so happened that I work with other toxic leaders and that influenced my actions. True. And I was highly insecure because coming as an immigrant to a foreign land, I had to prove myself again and again and again. And then my childhood trauma where no one took me seriously. I never wanted that to happen again, but it became a vicious cycle. So when people recognize triggers, which happens when, for example, you insert yourself in important meetings because you know that that'll be helpful for your growth, or you take credit for other people's actions. When you start doing that on a repetitive basis, then those are all triggers. It's time for you to sit down and introspect what is happening. Because if you do these things, then those are the key ingredients of you becoming a toxic leader. And again, you can come out of it, and you just need a support system. You need to get vulnerable, saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. And I want to, if you trust someone, open up to them, reach out to them, say, I'm struggling. I don't know what to do. Can you help me with this? Oh, yeah. That's how change starts.
Yeah. One of my early bosses was South African. And so there was the general manager, him, me, and then the staff. So I was the buffer. Let's just say that. And he, at the time, was a rude so-and-so, arrogant, carrying on, but he was South African. What he didn't realize was he wasn't a bad person. It was his manner. And he came across as an incredibly toxic leader. And the staff came to me and said, Rob, we love you. We can't work with the boss anymore. And so I was put in a difficult situation. So I had to go to his boss, which I never, ever did. It was just something that I was brought up and spoke to him. And we spoke to him, and he had no idea that the way he was coming across and the way he was speaking was being interpreted in Australia in a totally different way. And to his credit, he changed. He was still the boss. But he changed the way he spoke to everyone. And we actually saw what I called with Graham, the real him. And he actually thanked me later. And he was my boss.
Right.
He said, because I never knew. If you look back at you being a toxic leader, what was the moment that you either realized or someone said to you, mate, you're carrying on like a spoiled Indian cricket captain who's not getting his own way and people don't like it? What happened?
So there are a couple of things which happened. Number one was I still remember this. I was in the elevator.
Yeah.
And I used to work on the 8th floor, and then I came to the ground floor, and one of my direct reports also was in the elevator with me. Then that day I was so stressed, and I was just walking even without noticing him. Then he said, hey, Raj, how's it going? Then I said, oh, man, sorry, I didn't notice you. Sorry, just a little stressed and thinking about something. Then he said, hey, if you don't mind, can I give you some feedback?
Wow.
And I usually was not open to feedback. And for some reason on that day, I said, yeah, what's up? And that changed everything, because he told me that I see people are noticing that you're always stressed, you're always overwhelmed, because I never used to trust people with work. I wanted to be involved in every way possible, because I wanted to show I was a star performer. I was the leader. I am the person everyone wants. Yeah. And it was eating me up. And he was saying that I was losing the trust of the team. And then I was taking credit for other people's work. Ooh. And he just opened up, because apparently the whole team knew it, but no one told me that. And this guy told me that day. So that was one trigger event. Another one was, I think this happened in the same week, maybe, if I'm not wrong, in a week or in a couple of weeks. I gave a bad performance review to another colleague wantedly, because she was proving herself and she was going to, come as equal status as me. So I wantedly gave her a bad performance review. And I got caught red-handed doing that. And that was the realization. So I came to a point where that I started realizing that I've gone into this whole abyss of a hole, and it was hard to get back, because I kept doing one thing after other, and it became a habit. And once that happened, and once this feedback happened, then I decided it's time to change. Yeah, I can't live like this. I need to change. And those two were pretty much the trigger events. And I did a lot of hilarious, but it sounds hilarious, but at that time it was serious stuff. But in my TEDx talk, I described what I did the day when I realized I got caught red-handed. I went to the apartment and did a lot of things, which again, we don't have to get into that right now. You could always check out my TEDx talk. But the point is, I think those were the two key events which pretty much changed my whole leadership style.
Was it something that, I'll use a methodology that I've been told, that it was like someone took a weight off your shoulders once you realized?
100%. It's like talking to a therapist.
Yeah.
You boil down all the stuff, and then you feel you cannot trust people. Then you go to a therapist, and then whatever is in your chest, when you share with someone, then, it's like a huge load off of you, and you can start breathing. I I had anxiety, stress, and every night when I went to sleep, I knew I did something bad, but I was
Yeah.
okay with it, or I forced myself to think it was okay. And when that becomes a repetitive pattern, then it becomes a normal part of who you are.
Yeah. What
And
would
then
you?
you need some trigger event to happen for you to get out of the situation, or you need someone to be open and then give you feedback on it.
What would you say to someone who has a toxic boss? How should they approach it? Because a lot of people just leave and say nothing, and that person goes along thinking that they're the best boss around and everyone's leaving. Or it gets to a stage where, it really gets bad for both of them. How would you approach it?
Yeah, so I would follow a combination of approaches. You mentioned one approach, which is talking to their bosses. But even before that, I would first try to understand where is that person coming from, in the sense when he or she says something. Is this a repetitive pattern or is it a one-off thing? That is something you want to first evaluate, because I hate that saying, first impression is the best impression. Yeah, that's not true, because sometimes people have a bad day.
Yeah,
And
they
if you're
do.
first time you're meeting the person who's having a bad day, it doesn't define who he is or who she is. So you need to give them a chance.
Yeah.
But if you're seeing repetitive patterns of them doing or displaying toxic traits, okay, now we are talking. Okay, now you know that, okay, there's a repetitive pattern. So first is the analysis of whether it's a repetitive pattern or it's a one-off thing. Second thing is, first talk to the person one-on-one. Give them a chance. Because if a person doesn't tell you, how do you know that you're affecting people? It's as simple as that. And have a one-on-one conversation saying, hey, if you don't mind, could I give you some feedback? And a lot of people are feeling the same way, but me knowing you, I want to give you that feedback, and then give that feedback. But if you're an introvert or you're afraid to do so, ask someone else who's going through the same situation, who's facing the same toxic actions, consequences of the toxic actions, maybe a colleague. Ask a colleague to talk with the toxic boss and say what you have to say. If still that doesn't work, then as a third stage, I would do what you do, which would go over the toxic boss's boss, go over the toxic boss to his boss or her boss, to talk about how the whole team is struggling and this may not be good in the long run, and people may leave the company and the project, would be affected. And once you shouldn't just complain. You could also give some possible solutions, saying, hey, could you talk to him or her, or could you try to figure out, what's happening in the person's life, because the team, we have really low morale right now. And once you do that, I think if you follow this 3-stage process, then it would be helpful. Even then, if the person doesn't change, then you probably have to fire the person. So for the good of the company and for the good of the people.
I was listening to a talk. I think it may have been even Gary Vaynerchuk, and he turned around and said, I would rather employ a good person that's average at their job than a bad person who is excellent at their job. And the interviewer said, why? They said, because that one person has a massive influence on the culture within a company.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
one bad apple can, spoil the entire group of apples, and that's why you have to be, especially as a leader, you have to see these patterns, try to identify these patterns. Of course, the leader, not being a toxic leader, should identify these patterns of what's happening. And it's your responsibility as a leader to make sure things like this doesn't happen. That's why you should show your vulnerability. That's one thing which has really helped me whenever I'm in problem, whenever I'm confused and I have to make a decision. I would say currently the 3 options which I'm thinking about, but I don't know that I have enough data to make the decision. What do you folks think about it? So show them that you're confused as well, and you're human. And then people, start helping you out. Based on research, is found that vulnerability helps to increase trust within your team. And especially for men,
Yep.
from the old generation, men are supposed to suck it up and then keep going.
Correct.
That's
Yep.
not true anymore, because
That's
you've
very
seen
true.
what that could lead to. So instead, think of yourself not a man or woman or anyone you identify with, but think of yourself as human, and then ask other people to help you out, because that's how you earn trust, and that's how people come to you, because they know that, okay, you're also human, you have your weaknesses, so I could be free to talk about my weaknesses to you as well, and then you could share some thoughts on it. So that's how it usually works.
Yeah. I was speaking with someone else and they said another thing COVID has highlighted with toxic leaders is that they lost control because people were working from home. And where in an office, you have a hierarchy. When you're sitting at home, you don't. And now they're trying to get them back to work and there's push and shove. Do you think that comes into it?
Oh, 100%. I think that goes with the missing the human interaction factor, because they're used to seeing their teams. They're used to seeing people's body language and expressions, even if they're not in a meeting, because everyone sits in one section, and then you pass by and see the person. So it gives you a feeling, okay, you're connected. But now, with all these distributed teams, everyone collaborating via Zoom, it becomes harder. That's where you need to have systems in place to preserve that human connection, at least to a certain level. Of course, it'll never match face-to-face communication, but you could have regular one-on-one meetings with your team members, maybe extra one-on-one meetings. If you're meeting with someone once a month, now do once in 2 weeks, just to make sure they don't have any obstacles, they're doing okay. Then have virtual happy hours, like, alternate Fridays.
I never have a problem with that.
Yeah, no. Encourage people to come on Zoom with video and ask them to share a part of their lives, right? What their real life, what are they dealing with? Then recognize people. It's not only monetary benefits, but it's also word of appreciation. That goes a long way. When someone does good work, then when you're in a meeting, point those achievements out, because people feel valued. And then finally, I would say have all hands meetings on a regular basis with the whole team, where you keep them updated on how the project is going, how their efforts are helping the team, so on and so forth. So those are some strategies to bridge that gap in bridge that gap of missing that human connection. And of course, now in the post-COVID era, people are going back to work, right? And it may not be for 5 days a week, but even if it's for 2 days a week, try to have lunch with your team. There's so many different ways to engage. You just have to figure out, okay, what's your style, and how your team composition is, and then figure out what works based on the strategies which I just mentioned right now.
Do you think the younger generation, so like when I grew up, came through, I was very much what you said in India. You just did what you were told. You didn't question. If the boss was having a bad day, you just hid. These days, the younger generation, especially the 20 to 30-year-olds, seem far too easy to be offended, far too easy to run off and complain, rather than roll with it when someone's having a bad day. Do you see much of that? And how do you see, and then they'll turn around and say, well, he's a toxic leader because he pulled me up on that, when no, the boss is doing his job. How do you see the difference between people pointing and saying someone's toxic and really all the boss is doing is just doing what he's employed to do?
I think people have to get a taste of reality. And that comes when you enter the corporate environment and see for yourself the different personas of people. I do agree with you that our younger generation are a lot more sensitive. Being sensitive is not bad, but there's a fine balance, right? So, for example, when I was leading teams and I was working with young people, whenever they used to come up with problems, I would say, okay, I understand you have these problems. What are some solutions you thought about?
Yes.
Start coaching people to think about solutions, because anyone can complain. It's so easy to complain, but
That's
fixing
true.
a freaking problem, that's the hard part.
Yes.
And again, I don't have to do it alone. I have smart people I work with. So you're saying this person doesn't talk to me. Okay, I understand that's a problem. Yeah. What are you going to do about it? What solutions do you have? So that people who work with me know. So whenever they complain to me, I have a unwritten rule that I just don't want problems. I want solutions as well. Okay. Of course, if you're getting harassed, sexual harassment and stuff, that's slightly a different issue, but I'm just talking about general problems, right? You have to feel free to share with me, but also come up with solutions. And then I do the same thing. You have to lead by example. When I say, okay, this is going to be a problem, and these are some solutions I'm thinking, but what about you folks? What are your thoughts on it? So when you start modeling the behavior, even the young folks get influenced. And then, and sometimes you just have to say things as it is. You messed up big time.
Yeah.
But everyone commits mistakes. For example, I was working this company and I made this mistake as well. So let them know that committing mistakes is okay, but it is a mistake and you need to own up to your actions. So owning up to your actions and then coming up with solutions apart from just problems. Those are two ways where you can coach these young folks, because they don't know how the industry works.
Yep.
And not everything is kumbaya in the work environment, right? And they have to learn. And if they want to become better, you learn it. That's how it works. That's how life works. Yeah. Yes, I know your ego is affected. You're human. It's okay. Embrace it. But now let's talk about how we can get better. That's what it should be about.
So as we start to wind up today, and you've seen, I mean, you're coming from India, it's a totally different culture to America. And you've now seen both sides. I'm sure you've still got friends back there and you're seeing the COVID on both sides and how both countries are coming out. If a senior leader came to you and said, Raj, can you give me a couple of tips to ensure that I don't get toxic leadership coming into my business as people start coming back into the workforce in a very different way to what it was 2 years ago, what would you say to them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think I would go back to some of the things which I just mentioned, right?
Yeah.
First thing is you should catch the problem earlier. You shouldn't wait for the problem to come with the person when they come on site into the office.
Yep.
That's where these frequent checkpoints with them really helps, like the one-on-one meetings and, having virtual happy hours. Those things really help to boost the morale.
Yep.
But despite that, if people come and then start showing some toxic traits which are affecting the team, then you just have to call a spade and then address the issue. I would go one-on-one with a person and say, hey, I see that you did this, and this, and it's detrimental to the team in these ways. I just want to let you know. And these are the things I would do to change. Do you have anything else you want to offer on how you could change as well? Or tell me your side of the story. You just have to address issues as and when it immediately happens. Because one of the biggest problems with especially large companies, I know that's what you started talking about. The reason large companies have more toxic leaders is because the chain of communication has to go through a lot of red tape and obstacles. And what happens is the boss will wait till the annual performance review and let all these toxic traits go till that point of time. And then they'll ding you on your annual performance review, giving you a low rating saying, you didn't do this.
Yeah.
But the point is, you never even told me. You didn't even give me a chance to rectify that.
True.
So the summary of what I'm trying to say is make sure you catch problems like this earlier, but despite that, if it happens at work, immediately nip it in the bud and address the issue, give the person a chance to improve. And that's how it works.
So more importantly, what's your favorite restaurant in Chicago? Like, well, you and I were talking about food and beer before we started.
I'm a huge foodie, man. So this is the thing. I love food from different cuisines. I love deep dish pizza. Chicago is really well known for deep dish pizza.
Yep.
It's a staple. And there's a place called Luminati's.
Yes.
Which is really famous here. And their deep dish pizza, it's amazing, right? So I have a deep dish place. I have a Mediterranean place. Then I have an Indian place. So I have so many different places. So it's like asking, do you like computers? You know, it's so hard for me because I'm so into food. But if given an option, yes, I would say Luminati's for deep dish because that's a staple of Chicago. Like we're known for the deep dish pizza and the Italian beef, which is the second thing which we are known for as well.
I have been lucky enough to have a couple of good Italian meals in Chicago, and
nice.
They're quite large and they're quite full of spice, and it is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, in America, everything is large size.
Yeah,
from cars to the food portions as well. So yeah, for me, that was a learning experience as well. If I order a small plate, that could feed 2 people in America. So it is what it is. Again, that's talking about culture comes back to the point of culture shock. That is something you get used to it as well.
Mate, if I got you a table of Illuminati's and I said you can invite 2 people, who would you bring? And you can only share one deep dish pizza, okay?
What's that?
You can only share one deep dish pizza between the 3 of you. Who are you going to invite?
2 people.
2 people. I love the look on people's face when I ask this question when they don't know it's coming is gold.
No, but I would say 2 people who are near to Chicago. Those are the
anywhere
people
in the world, mate.
Oh,
anybody?
No, that's what I'm saying. 2 people who are new to Chicago.
Yes,
those are the people I want them to taste deep dish pizza because I love exposing people to different types of food and the culture, right? And I welcome people doing that for me when I travel for conferences and stuff. So I would prefer anyone who doesn't live in Chicago and has never heard of deep dish pizza to come with me, and then seeing their face when they had their first bite, that's priceless. So I would say, 2 people who haven't had prior experience would be the 2 people I would take.
Now, if I come to the States next year, I'm going to be ringing you up and say, come on, mate, I'll meet you down at that Illuminati restaurant. We'll have some deep dish pizza.
Oh, 100%. I look forward to, showing you around and showing other people around and also introducing them to the amazing food and beer scene we have in Chicago.
It's been a complete pleasure talking to you this morning on the show. If people wanted to reach out, say g'day, see your TEDx speeches, or just talk to you about tech and leadership, how do they find you?
So all the information about me can be found on my website, which is rajsubra.com, RAJSUBRA.com.
I'll put it all in the show notes.
You'll find my TEDx videos. You'll find my conference talks and how I help people. You know my story. Everything is on my website. And of course, I'm also an author of a book called Skyrocket Your Career.
Yes.
And if you go to skyrocketyourcareerbook.com, you can find information about the book. You'll have a lot of free resources, which you can download even without buying the book. And the first chapter of the book is free. You can download that as well. And finally, I live on LinkedIn. So I'm super active on LinkedIn. So make sure you follow me and connect with me because every day I post content related to career advancement, leadership, motivation, inspiration, productivity. Those are the things which I talk about and live through as well. So connect with me on LinkedIn. And those are the best ways to, to catch up with me and follow me and have a conversation.
Fantastic, mate. I'll put all of that on the show notes for people who are listening. It's been great catching up with you. I look forward to having a beer and pizza with you next year in Chicago.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me. I had such a great pleasure being here and sharing my thoughts on various topics.
Awesome. And as we say at the end of every one of our podcasts is, Have a groovy day.